Okay, that makes sense.
And we're live.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the City of Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals for the agenda evening of September 22nd. Our scheduled start time is published in our agenda is 7 p.m. My name is Rob Ciampetti, Chairman. In a moment, I'm going to introduce the members of our board. We will go through our agenda this evening, and we will start with the very top of the agenda with a roll call. We'll go into a business meeting. We will review, discuss, and then approve the minutes. Pardon me. And then we have two requests for minor modifications before we go into the two public hearings this evening, which is section 3. Just very quickly, I'll introduce the members of the board. We have in attendance this evening, Mark Moore, Vice Chair, Mr. Stephen Delisle, Secretary, Ms. Rachel Webb, Member, Mr. Ken Swanton, Member, Mr. Walter Budchanan, Associate Member, and Brendan Banovic, Associate Member. And again, my name is Rob Ciampetti, Chairman. Also in attendance this evening, we have Andy Port. Andrew Port is our Planning Director of the City of Newburyport, as well as Caitlin Sullivan, our City Planner. And then, of course, Gretchen Joy, our tireless note taker and keeper of the records. So with that, I will go through and call the roll. I'll ask just everyone in attendance, as you members of the zoning board, to just simply respond with either present, here, or I. And once we have established a quorum, we'll jump into the business meeting and we will get into the business of the Newburyport ZBA agenda for September 22nd, 2020. Calling the roll of the Newburyport ZBA, Mr. Mark Moore.
Here.
Mr. Delisle, Stephen Delisle.
Present.
Miss Rachel Webb.
Here.
Mr. Bud Shannon.
Here.
And Mr. Brandon Banovic. Don't see Brandon logged on just yet. So Rob Ciampetti, I'm present. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members in attendance.
I'm also here too, Ken Swanton.
Oh, great. Ken, I'm sorry. Did I not call your name? And
It's fine.
my apologies. I didn't mean to skip over you. So Mr. Swanton is present. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members of the ZBA present. So we do have a quorum, and we have a legal board to vote this evening. We're moving into the business meeting. We have the minutes from the meeting of September 8th. I wasn't. At the last minute, I wasn't able to attend that meeting, and Vice Chair Mark Moore was the chairman. So I will defer to the members of the board that were here on any comments, changes, or revisions to the minutes. And in the absence of that or following that, I'll just ask for a motion to approve. Anyone have any changes to the minutes of 9/8?
Yes, this is Ken Swanton. I have some changes to the minutes of 9/8 that are a little extensive, so I sent them to everybody ahead of time. I mean, I can read them if you'd like, or
No.
Andy, you could put them on the screen, Andy, if you'd like. But
Let's do that. Andy, if you could put those up, then at least anyone in attendance can see specifically what it looks like, what in red line is being proposed to be changed.
right, they all concern one topic at our meeting 2 weeks ago on the Plum Island application at 468th Street, where I went back through the tape and I thought there was an error in the draft minutes as to where the person who spoke in opposition actually lived. I want to get that changed and put a little more of his specifics in, and a couple other comments that some of the others of us had made, given all that's happened on this item.
Very good. Do you wish to go into any detail on the proposed changes, or just simply rely on the red lines that are now up on the public board for?
Well, I'm hoping that people have gotten it since I sent out early this morning, so I hope that people had a chance to see it. But if anybody has any questions about it, I'd be happy to address it.
Okay, Ken. Why don't we just we'll take a pause of a moment, and I will just simply poll the board. And again, since I wasn't chairing that meeting, I'll defer to the members of the board that were present. Do any members of the ZBA have any comments, clarifications, changes, or further revisions to the minutes and or any of the proposed red lines that have been proposed in what's up on the board right now?
This is Mark Moore. I don't have any additions, and I think the changes to the minutes on the 468th Street application were pretty thorough and self-explanatory.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Delisle, any comments, changes, or further revisions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not have any further comments or changes to Mr. Swanton's clarification of red line, and I would endorse those changes as to the minutes of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb, any changes?
No, I agree with what has been said so far. I think Mr. Swanton's clarifications were apt and accurate, so go forward.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. And Mr. Swanton?
I still like my changes, so I'm fine with them, and I have no other changes to propose elsewhere in the minutes.
Very good. And Mr. Shannon?
No changes. I'm in agreement with what Mr. Swan's put in front of us.
And thank you, Mr. Shannon. And I note that our associate member, Mr. Banovic, is still not among the panelists. So I'll ask members of the board if we have a motion to approve the minutes.
This is Ken Swanson. I move we approve the minutes as amended.
Mr. Moore seconded.
All right. The motion's made by Mr. Swanton and seconded by Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Delisle?
Yes.
Ms. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Swanton?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
And I'll defer. That's 5 in the affirmative. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. Thank you. And Andy, you can pull that down if you don't mind. Moving on to the two matters before us. Request for minor modification of 162 State Street. There's two applications, 026 and 027. And then there's another request for minor modification on 190 High Street. I'll point out now, just due to a sort of a routine conflict, potential client or client conflict, both myself and Ms. Rachel Webb, I believe, have conflicts of interest and are electing to recuse ourselves from that, which would allow Mr. Moore to step up and stand in his chair for purposes of that application when we get to it. And I'll just point that out right now while we're here. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Delisle. I will also need to recuse myself from the 190 High Street matter.
Okay. So we have Ms. Webb is out, I'm out, and you are out. That leaves, we won't have a quorum. We'll only have 3 members of the ZBA in the absence of Mr. Banovic.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Banovic appears to be over in the attendees side.
Really?
Yeah, this is Andy. I've tried to promote him to a panelist, so I don't know if he's able to unmute himself, but he should be able to chime in now.
Excellent.
Oh, there he is.
There we see you. We read you loud and clear, Mr. Banovic. Okay, so Brendan's online. I'll just note for the record a revision to our roll call indicating that Mr. Banovic is now on the panelists and able to vote at 7:09. So with that, we will have a minimum board, and when we get to that, I will simply I'll defer to Vice Chair Mark Moore to go forward with a minimum board on the request for minor modification on 190 High. So without anything further on that, I'm going to jump into the request for minor modification of 162 State Street. Just before I do, for the members of the attendees and audience that are observing our Zoom meetings, unlike our live in-person meetings, we have a sequence by which we run the meeting in the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I always like to just go over very briefly what that format looks like so that anyone who's logging in for the first time has a sense and an overview of what goes on, what the sequence is, when when they would want to speak, etc. So essentially with each of these applications, this section of the meeting with minor modifications, these are applications that have already happened and they're requesting minor changes which are addressed at the outset of the meeting. When we get into public hearings, the way the public hearings will work is I will read the public notice for each by describing the applicant, the address, the matter, and the relief being sought by each applicant, at which point we will then ask for the applicant's representative, attorney, engineer, or architect to present the application, after which we will close that portion of the hearing and we will go to the public comment section. The public comment section is divided up into those who wish to speak in favor, those who wish to speak in opposition, or those who just simply wish to speak. In the evolution of this, we may well do away with the pro and con column and just simply have a member of the public with something to say column. And either way, if you're not sure whether you're pro, whether you wish to speak in support of or in opposition to, just simply raise your hand by clicking at the bottom right of your screen. Andy Port, our planning director, will unmute your mic, and then you will have your opportunity to speak, and the board will have the opportunity to hear what you have to say as a member of the public, whether you're an abutter or not. After we finish the public comment section, we close that portion of the hearing and we go into questions from the board. That's the section when members of the board will adapt or adopt comments that they may have heard from members of the public or representatives of the applicant. They will pose questions to either the applicant, the applicant's professionals, or otherwise, and they will often use that opportunity, having heard a question or a comment from a member of the public, to reframe that in the form of a question if they feel so inclined. After the questions from the board, we close that section of the public hearing and we go to deliberations. That's the section of the zoning board of appeals hearing when you essentially, as members of the public, observe us as we think out loud. And in the spirit of open meeting, as well as full disclosure and transparency, you hear us discuss, all of the details of the application, questions we might have by and between each other. And this is also an opportunity when members of the board may choose to elicit further detail from any of the parties from whom we may have heard, including the applicant or representatives or others. After we finish deliberations, we close that portion of the hearing, and in the spirit of Robert's Rules of Order, a member of the zoning board has to propose a motion in the form of a motion to approve. It doesn't mean that that member has to approve or chooses to approve or feels that they're in support of. It's just the framing under Robert's Rules of the motion that gets it on the table. So a motion is made to approve the application. That motion is seconded, and then I will call the roll. And in order for the application to prevail, it has to have at least 4 votes in the affirmative. So that is essentially the lay of the land. Having done that, we'll go into the first matter, which is the request for minor modification of 162 State Street, 2 applications 026 and 027 of 2017. May we hear from the applicant who wishes to speak on behalf of 162?
This is Andy, Rob. It doesn't look to Caitlin and I as if we have the applicant in the audience. We're not sure if there's a reason for that, but we would leave it to you as to whether or not it's a relatively minor modification to the permit, but we believe it may make sense to wait for the applicant. So I'm not sure if you want to make a continuance. We don't see anybody in the audience raising their hand to represent the applicant either. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can certainly, we have the written application and the description of what the applicant's requesting. I have no problem putting a pin in it for the moment and then circling back in the event that the, who's speaking on behalf of the application?
Bethany Femi. We could move to 190 and then come back to this, like you said, if you want. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do that. And okay. This way we give the applicant an opportunity to at least articulate what they're requesting. So with that, we're now at the minor modification request of 190 High Street, at which point Ms. Webb and myself will mute our mics, step down, and Mr. Moore, our vice chair, will step up.
I believe Mr. Delisle is going to be taking a pass as well.
That's
on
correct.
This one. Okay.
And Mr. Delisle is also recusing. Thank you for reminding me.
Not a problem. All right. So pinch hitting. Mr. Moore stepping in here for the request for minor modification for 190 High Street. That's 2016-065 as far as the application number. The applicant seeks a minor modification to the special permit for the carriage house by removing the anticipated new curb cut from the originally proposed and approved project. The applicant seeks to use the existing driveway and carriage house to provide all the required parking on site. I believe, Andy, you have a preamble to this, or?
Yeah. So my staff and I were involved with this particular modification and discussing with the applicant as well as an abutter who had a concern about a driveway curve cut here. So we thought it might be simple to just give a quick overview of what's being proposed here, because at least from the office's perspective, it seems like a relatively straightforward minor modification. But if that's right with you, I'll just give an overview.
Please.
Okay, and we do have Ted Nelson in the audience and Sarah Wolf as well, but I'm sure they're welcome to chime in as well if they'd like.
Great.
I'll just give a quick overview. The application here a couple years back was to have there's residential units in both of these structures. This is the carriage house, and this structure. Oh, sorry. Let me make sure you can see my cursor. The carriage house here and the main structure. There were approvals given by both the ZBA and the planning board. And at the time, there was the expectation that cars might be parked in this location here, and that a new driveway curb cut would be entered into the granite and the brick sidewalk here. Since that time, the applicant's been working on a preservation restriction, which is part of the permits involved. And they actually just got confirmation from Mass Historical that preservation restriction in its final form has been approved for signatures and routing. So that lengthy process is coming to an end. But the issue that was raised was that there'd be essentially a preference from an abutter not to have another driveway curb cut along High Street in this section. It impacts spaces and so forth. So the applicant agreed to submit a minor modification to both of the boards, asking to make it clear for the record that they would be agreed to remove the spaces from here, not have a curb cut in this location, and to park all 6 cars, or essentially 5.5, but we round up in zoning, on the site, all on the site here. So 4 are shown in the aerial photograph, as you can see, and then 2 would be in the carriage house garage. We checked with the fire department. There's no objection to their access to the site. So we have no reason to object to the minor modification, and we would recommend that the ZBA do the same, which was what the planning board did last week.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy. And now would the applicant and representative like to add anything to that?
I have nothing. This is Ted, the applicant. I have nothing to add. The only thing I would add is, in addition to the 6 spaces, the 2 in the garage and the 4 in the parking spot as shown, the property goes all the way through to Washington Street. And on Washington Street, we own 3 additional paved parking spaces that would be available to everyone. So an abundance of parking.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
And I would agree. This is Sarah Wolf, representative here for Ted Nelson. I think Andy did a great job presenting that, and what Ted just added is what I was also going to point out. So I think we've covered all the bases so far.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, do we take comments? No, we have discussion amongst the board members. Did the board have any questions, I guess, for any of our applicants / presenters? Hearing none. Any discussion?
This is Ken Swanton. I'll chime in first.
Sure.
I think it looks very good. It solves quite a few problems. It reduces a curb cut. It deals with a question from an abutter. It solves a lot of problems, and I think Andy did a great job with the presentation. And so that's why I didn't have any questions. I think it looks like a good solution. So thank you.
Excellent. Anyone else have anything to add to the discussion on this request for minor modification? All right, hearing none, and I would agree with Mr. Swanton's characterization. This seems to make sense. It appears to be minor. It's got support from the town city officials. So if we're done with the discussion and there was a motion to approve this as a minor modification, we'd certainly be open to hearing it.
This is Ken Swanton. I'll be happy to make a motion. I move to deem the request minor and approve the minor modification to the special permit for 190 High Street. That's 2016 SP 65.
Bud Shagnon, I'll second that motion.
All right. Motion to approve made by Mr. Swanton, seconded by Mr. Chagnon. We'll now take a vote. Mr. Swanton,
Aye.
Mr. Chagnon,
Aye.
Mr. Banovic,
Aye.
and I also vote in the affirmative. So that's 4 in the affirmative. The motion is approved. The application is approved.
Terrific.
That concludes that. Congratulations. And from that, I believe we move into the public hearings and we get the board back.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. This is Rob Champetti, Chairman again. We're going to head into our public hearings. And I'll begin by reading the public notice, and then we will hear from the applicant. But before I do, we have to determine which of our members, since we have both associates in attendance, which of our associates, Mr. Shannon and Mr. Banovic, voted at the last meeting, because we'll alternate and make the other one who didn't our voting member this evening.
Chairman, this is Bud Shagnon. I believe I voted at the last.
Okay, thanks, Bud. So we will, for purposes of this meeting, we will make Mr. Banovic our voting alternate. And with that, we will go into the first application. First application is the application of David and Ella Buckley for the property at 28 Summit Place, matter 2020063, a dimensional variance to construct a pool in the required front yard setback. May we hear from the applicant, Mr. or Mrs. Buckley?
Hello, board and chairman. This is David Buckley. Yes, so basically our home at 28 Summit Place is based on a corner. As a result, the rear of the house has a portion that could also be constituted or is constituted as the front. There is only really one place we can put a pool. It falls in line with all the, I guess, all the restrictions, with the exception of the left-hand side, where we would be looking for a variance to go 6 feet from our boundary in, as opposed to 25 feet if it was considered to be a front. The setback of our property from the road is actually is 13 feet as it stands. So the pool actually would be 19 feet in from the road, but 6 feet in from our line on the left side, looking at the house at the front. We had, when we purchased the house 14 years ago, put planted 25 arborvitae trees along the back of our home. We would plan on carrying this across the front of the pool and up the side. So, and also with the fence, which is a transparent fence, we really only wanted it to look aesthetically pleasing as being a sort of fir trees as opposed to a wooden fence or anything that was too, how would I say, noticeable. So we would plan to do that so that anybody passing by on the Summit Place would not see the pool. It would be very discreet. We have basically 4 neighbors, four neighbors, because obviously our house, or not obviously, but our house basically looks onto the field at the back of the knock. So we have a house to our right, and really the other houses are behind, and then to our left. All the neighbors are very pleased with the plan that we put forward. We explained it to them. They've all offered their support and offered letters. We only actually asked one person to submit a letter. The others, we just asked for signatures, which were submitted to you. And that is the request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buckley. And we will just take a moment and poll the audience, see if there's anyone in support or opposition or otherwise, and we may have some questions. Okay, so anyone wish to speak in support of the application? And again, if you wish to speak in support, please just raise your hand virtually. Seeing no hands raised, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Similarly, no hands raised. Anyone wishing to speak at all? Not surprising, there are also no hands. We will close that portion of the public hearing and move to questions from the board. Any members of the ZBA have any questions for Mr. Buckley on the proposed application for the dimensional variance?
Mr. Buckley, this is Mr. Moore. I have a question on whether you could get into a little more detail on why this is really the only place on the lot that you could place this.
Certainly. So if you can see if I don't know if we could go back to the actual previous slide that we just had there, it might be a little easier for me to explain it. Is that possible?
Yeah, I could go back to that one. This is the same aerial photograph, just a little higher resolution.
I just wanted to be able to explain something that I think would help.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
If you have the previous picture, the drawing, the outline. No, that's not possible. Yeah, no, the one that we were working on before.
The diagram?
The diagram, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
So as you can see, the footprint of our house, the back, shall we say true back, where it doesn't come to the side, it is actually very narrow. We have a built-in deck that was built when the house was built itself, which covers essentially, you see where you have in the middle of the back, you have like almost like an L cut out. Mm-hmm. That actually goes straight across, and that is a complete deck that would make that, shall we say, wall in a straight line. Because of that, the 3 steps that come down go into the backyard area there by the space of 3 feet by, 3 steps by, I think, 8 inches a piece. We also have a bulkhead there at the beginning, at the lower end or just above where we were planning to put the pool. So what it means is we are very confined as to where we could try to, place a pool. We felt that trying to wedge a pool in the back at that particular area was unsatisfactory for 3 main reasons. Number one, from a practicality point of view, we were limited because of the bulkhead. Number 2, from a safety point of view, for us to put the pool in there, it would literally be starting where the steps end. So you'd be coming down off an 18-foot length deck, basically into the pool itself, which would not really be practical. You couldn't pass by. So that's obviously an issue. Number 2, we have 2 dogs, and we have a fence that runs across the bottom of the other side of the house that goes across to keep the dogs in the back. And we did that as opposed to bringing the fence down to the road to allow the dogs to have privacy and not be barking at passers-by, etc. If we were to put a pool in there, we would lose the ability to be able to let the dogs out there because the pool would take up all the space. Finally, it would be, because it's tight, we would have to remove quite a few of the Habibi trees that we put in, which we would not like to do because we've been growing them for 14 years and it's very, very nice now the way that whole back has developed, and we'd like to bring that round. So really it was between, I guess, practicality, the neighborly courtesy because of the dogs, and the environmental factor is the reason we chose the area that we chose. We have more space to be able to add width to it. We can do it discreetly. And in addition, we just finished off a wall, shall we say, from the house going across, so that even the pool, if it was put in there, would still be segregated from the immediate back, so we can keep the dogs, shall we say, out from the pool area and keep it private and safe from any say, children we would have in our own home visiting. So that is the reason we chose that area.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Delisle?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Buckley, so to meet the front yard setback at 25 feet, guess what I'm understanding from you is that would be basically impossible, and it would create a situation where you'd walk right out of your door into the water of the pool.
Yes. So well, basically, yes. We in order for us to get 25 feet from that line, we would have to put it completely in the back of the house, which would mean that, well, because of the bulkhead that's there, we'd then have to go further back again, which means that the majority of the pool would be run along the length of the 18-foot of decking we have in the back. And because it's such a narrow area, right, so yeah, you would have no ability to. It really would make it practical to put a pool there. To be honest with you, I just wouldn't do it.
Right, and so because of this unique circumstance, that's why you're seeking the variance to put the pool
Correct.
inside the 25-foot setback.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb?
I really don't have a whole lot to add to the comments that have already been made, other than the fact that, to point out that, because it's a corner lot, they have the 2 front yards. So it's very similar to an application we had at the previous meeting. It's almost the same thing, actually. So they're really in the side yard there, but because of the zoning definition of a corner lot, they have 2 front yards. So that's why they have the issue going on.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Mr. Swanton?
I think my colleagues have pretty much addressed my questions, so I have no additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Swanton. And Mr. Benedict?
And I also don't have any questions. I think Ms. Webb said it well too in terms of just past precedent. So I appreciate the history.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Banovic. And I agree with the consensus of the board as well. I think the application such as this, where we have a corner lot, hamstring an applicant with effectively, from a zoning standpoint, 2 front yards and all of the trappings that go with 2 front yards. And in this instance, I think it functions in an appropriate, and I think an appropriate location of the lot. And I think that's within the spirit of the zoning. Our board has a routine history of looking with that careful eye to these sorts of pool applications. And to Ms. Webb's point and others, we've seen one very, very recently. So I agree with everyone's sentiment. I too can support it. Do we have a motion to approve?
This is Rachel Webb. I'll make a motion to approve 28 Summit Place variance 2020-63.
I'll second it, Ken Swanton.
Okay, motion is made by Ms. Webb and seconded by Mr. Swanton. Calling the roll, Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Ms. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Banovic.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That is 6 in the affirmative. The motion carries and the application's approved. Good luck to you, David, and good luck with the pool.
Thank you, board.
Very good. Moving to the second and last application in the public hearing this evening. This is the application of Stephen Blanchett, care of Sarah Wolf Esquire, Finneran and Nicholson, PC, for the property located at 23 Boyd Drive. There's 2 components to this application. Docket 2020-064, a special permit for nonconformities to construct a 699 square foot addition in order to use that addition as an in-law apartment under, I believe, 9B2B3, and application 2020-065, a special permit to allow the in-law apartment, which is use number 109. May we hear from Attorney Wolf on behalf of Mr. Blanchett?
Yes, of course. Hi, I am here representing Mr. Blanchett, filling in for Attorney Mark Griffin, who you've dealt with before on this matter. With respect to the proposed construction, as mentioned, of an in-law apartment, which would be attached to applicant's existing home and which would obviously be occupied then by Mr. Blanchett's parents. So the premises are known as 23 Boyd Drive. They are located in the R1 zoning district. The lot itself conforms to all current dimensional requirements in all respects except for the frontage. It only has 87.22 feet where 125 are required. The current use for the lot, it's single family use, which is permitted by right in the R1 zoning district. So the applicant proposes to construct an apartment within, in addition to the existing home. His lot is very large. It's 29,985 feet. Petitioner proposes an approximately 699 square foot in-law apartment, which would be attached to the southerly side of the house, set back from the garage, but sharing a wall at that point. So I can continue through just some of the points that it meets for the in-law special permit criteria, section 12A. So the in-law apartment will be used to house a member of the owner's family in section 12A. As I mentioned, it will house the petitioner's parents, that is Paul and Christine Blanchett. The dimensional requirements for the project will be otherwise met. So the existing structure meets all dimensional requirements and was built by right as a single family home in the R2 zoning district. There will be no additions to the existing footprint or the building envelope that are associated with this apartment. The GFA of the apartment will not exceed 900 square feet, which is the maximum amount for new construction. As you can see from the floor plans that were submitted to the zoning administrator, the gross floor area of the apartment, which I mentioned, will be 699 square feet, so less than the maximum that's allowed. With the size and layout of the premises, there are already 2 parking spaces available in the garage and several more in the driveway, which is more than enough to accommodate the apartment in the single family home. Petitioner's parents will park in the driveway or the garage on a first come, first served basis. And because this is new construction, it's going to have to comply with all current safety and building codes, so it should meet that criteria. Moving more to the general special permit criteria, section XH7, this particular use is one family use plus the in-law apartment use. So the existing single family home will remain and it'll continue to comply in all respects with the use. And the proposal to construct the in-law apartment will conform to all the dimensional requirements in R2 zoning district, and the use code would be use 101. The requested use here is really essential and desirable to the public convenience and welfare. With this single family home, you know, the intent of section 12A, we want to let parents and children live together where the need and the desire exists, so long as that's not outweighed by the adverse impact upon the community. This in-law apartment would meet the intent of the ordinance and that it will allow Mr. Blanchett's parents to continue to reside with them in that in-law apartment. The impact would be minimal as there's more than sufficient lot area, as mentioned before, and space between the neighboring property owners. So no appreciable difference in having merely 2 more adults using that structure. And as mentioned, the garage and driveway already accommodates greater than 3 cars, so the parking is also not going to be a factor here. The requested use as well will not create any undue traffic congestion or unduly impair the pedestrian safety. I just mentioned that the required parking will be provided and there is no significant increase in traffic that could occur from 1 additional dwelling unit beyond what we already have there. The requested use should also not overload any public water, drainage, or sewer system, or any other municipal system. It's just 1 more additional small dwelling unit. There's no special regulations for the use as set forth in the special permit table. Now, I do know that there are restrictions in section 12A as to length and time extensions, etc., but not as it relates to the use specifically, as I just mentioned. The use will not impair the integrity or the character of the district or the adjoining districts, and we don't think it will be detrimental to the health or welfare. That R2 zoning district, it's primarily intended to provide for single and 2 family uses in accordance with section 3B of zoning ordinance. The addition of this little apartment is a much lesser impact than a 2 family use would be due to the significant limitations that we'd have on size and the length of usage. The project should also not cause an excess of that particular use that could be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. The petitioner here is not aware of any other in-law apartments in the neighborhood, actually. The proposed use that we're talking about is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The R1 zoning district is intended for single family use, and the in-law apartment certainly meets the spirit of the district as a dwelling unit, and also of section 12A. And then, of course, the residential use will comply with all applicable public health and safety code requirements. So, for these reasons, as listed, the petitioners are requesting the ZBA grant the application for the special permit for use for an in-law apartment. And of course, the petitioners would agree to abide by any such conditions as are applicable, particularly those in section 11A, F through J. So I'll move over to let Matt and Scott talk since they're going to speak more to the plans.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Members of the board, Matt Lanches here from Scott Brown Architects, 38 Madison Street, Amesbury for the record. The proposed in-law sits to the left of the existing home, so it is just under, as Sarah had mentioned, the allowable square footage of 699 square feet. It is set back from the existing garage approximately 22 feet, and it is tucked back approximately 5.5 feet beyond the 20-foot side yard setback. Andy, if you could please go to page A2.1. So from the front elevation, we're keeping the roof line down and we're holding the height to 18'9" to the midpoint of the roof and just under 22'3" to the ridge of the addition. So well below the maximum height of 30 feet. We are also using similar style casement windows to match the character of the contemporary style home. Siding, trim, windows, and roofing are all shown to match the existing home as well. It's a relatively short presentation. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Wolf to conclude the presentation, and I will be happy to address any questions if there are any.
And I just want to turn it over to Mr. Blanchett, see if he wanted to add anything just to this petition before we wrap it up.
Sure. Thank you very much. I just want to thank you and the board for hearing and reviewing our application. I certainly want to assure you the purpose and goal of this is to create a bubble that, you know, given this time is important to us to be able to have our parents in a safe spot with us and a permanent solution for them. We actually sold a condo today that they were living in that would not be able to accommodate them forever, a 4-floor townhouse. And my mom having 2 knee replacements, this is a way we can get them with us and just have them be with us ongoing, and it'd be a great thing for our family. Prior to the application, I did speak with my neighbors, all of which were very much supportive of this. Had I known I could get signatures or have them write letters, I would have done that, and some I'm sure would have been more than willing to do so. But I did approach them, and they are very in favor of this and supportive of me. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I really appreciate your time, and I think that's all I have.
Okay. Was there anything? Thank you, Mr. Blanchett.
Thank you.
Attorney Wolf, was there anything further as part of the presentation?
No, I mean, I think we're all set. Happy to open it back up, and thank you for your time and for listening.
Very good. Thanks very much. I will just pull the members of, or anyone in attendance that wishes to speak in support or opposition. I want to note for the record that at the outset, I mistakenly referred to this application as being under 9B2B3 when in fact it's under sections 12A and 10H7. So technical error, but I just want to make sure I note the correction. There's no application being sought under 9B2B3. Okay, so anyone wishing to speak in support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in support, just raise your hand. Seeing no further hands. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing no hands, we'll close that portion of the public hearing and go to questions from the board. Just to kind of keep things moving, we'll start with Mr. Moore.
I don't have any questions. I thought it was really thorough, and the presentation went well. Yeah, I have nothing. I have no questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Delisle.
Sorry about that. I couldn't find the unmute button. So just to be clear, maybe this is more of a question for Andy or Caitlin. There is no special permit for nonconformities here? Question mark. I thought that as part of. Sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, so Jennifer Blanchet is the zoning administrator, and she indicated that there are 2 permits that the board is looking at. So one is the special permit for nonconformities, and the other is the special permit for the in-law apartment itself.
So there is a special permit for nonconformities based on the fact that you have a nonconforming frontage, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that Ms. Wolf needs to talk to us about the special permit requirements.
I was sorry, I don't want to interrupt anyone. Not seeing people is disconcerting. I was under the impression, it could be under the misimpression, but that it was more of a special permit for use. But I could be wrong. So
I'm just checking at the moment to see if we have Jennifer Blanchet's zoning determination on this. Yeah, here we go. So Jennifer Blanchet indicated in her review of this on, this is August 13th, that the relief that would be needed here is both the in-law apartment special permit and, oh, you know what? I think it appears actually that it may have been a transcription error in the agenda. So the two special permits that are involved are the in-law apartment and the over 500 square feet increase under the category of special permit not for nonconformities. So the special permit for nonconformities, which it was correct to point that out, is specifically because this is going over 500 square feet, which is in section 9B3C. And actually, I can just show you folks that this is the zoning determination here.
Okay, yeah, I see that. Mr. Delisle, did you want to comment on, what are your thoughts on this? So this looks like this was it was listed as a typo in the agenda, but the substance of it remains accurate.
I will also note, this is Caitlin, hi there, that the applications were submitted correctly. So Sarah, if you have that in front of you, you may want to just check the bullet points listed in the application. It gives the findings for both the special permit and the special permit for nonconformity. So if you have that in front of you, you may want to just quickly refer to that.
Yeah, I will pull that up 1 second. Apologies, a bit of a lag on the Zoom between remote desktop and I think I'm stressing out my computer out here on the porch, trying to stay away from my toddler, but.
So this is Mr. Delisle. So I think you just need to meet 2A, that there'll be no addition of a new nonconformity and that the proposed change will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Which I think I thought that I discussed in my presentation, but I could be mistaken at this point, so.
Well, if you did, could you just sort of, could you readdress those 2 points for me?
Yes, happy to. So the requested use under, which one did you just say? I'm sorry, filling in for Mark is a little bit challenging right now. I apologize.
Yeah, so it's section 9B2A, 1 and 2.
This is Andy Port. I would note, just for the record, I've pulled up on the screen the section of the ordinance. In the, I believe based on the presentation that was given already, that the item number 2 has been spoken to some degree, although I defer to the board members if more is needed on that. And I believe that the application materials that have been submitted thus far do indicate that there's no intensification or extension of an existing nonconformity or the addition of a new nonconformity. But I think that, you know, those are the 2 bullets that the sections of the ordinance that the board was referring to.
Thank you, Andy. Mr. Delisle, any, I kind of remember, and you correct me if you disagree, of course, but I do remember part of the presentation spoke to the proposed change not being substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. There was I believe the applicant had indicated didn't believe that there were any other in-law apartments in the area, but that this was in construction, a modest addition given the size of the lot. I think we heard it was 28,000 square feet, but
Sorry, 29,000, sorry.
29,000. Thank you. What are your thoughts? I want to defer to you on this point, as it was a question, your question that you raised.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I see in the written materials there is a second letter from Mr. Griffin that deals with this issue, but I just don't think it was covered in the presentation. The presentation went through the other letter that dealt only with the in-law special permit criteria and the existing conditions there. So to the extent that it's in the written record, that's fine. I just thought that the applicant counsel would want to, make sure she hit those points. But to the extent it's in the written record, we're fine.
Yep. And Sarah, you may want to refer to page 3 of the application. That's where you can see the findings if you wanted to just check on those.
Yeah, and this is Andy. I just pulled up on the screen for the board's benefit that this was the second letter that was referred to. This is actually page 2 of that second letter, but this is the one that speaks to the this particular section of the ordinance, and the 2 findings you can see are listed there at the top, and then there's the rationale in the letter itself. As was noted, this was put in the written record.
Okay. We'll then, if were there any other questions, Mr. Delisle, on your end before we move on?
No, thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Webb, any questions of the applicant?
No, I have no questions. It was a very thorough presentation in combination with the application materials.
All right, thank you. Mr. Swanton.
No, I similarly, it's a large lot. It fits in easily. It fits the intent of the bylaw. I'm quite comfortable. Thank you. No questions.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Banovic.
I have no questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Banovic. I have no questions either. So we will move into deliberations. And again, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think we've certainly already discussed somewhat during the question section much of what would be fleshed out in deliberations, but we can just elicit anything further from members of the board speaking to the criteria for both the special permit the special permit criteria for an addition that exceeds 500 square feet, and then the general special permit criteria for the in-law apartment use 109, referring back to the written materials. So whomever wishes to jump in first, I guess we'll start with Mr. Moore.
The summary you just gave of, having gone over the special permit for nonconformities because of the greater than 500 square foot, that was spelled out very well in the letter, and we quickly reviewed it. So I believe that's very satisfactory as far as the in-law apartment special permit findings. Again, the applicant's counsel went through line by line and explained exactly where it would be in compliance, and I thought that was well presented along with the 1087 application. So I think it's pretty well been buttoned up, and I certainly can support it.
Very good. Mr. Delisle.
I would agree with Mr. Moore that that we've hit the points for the in-law apartment special permit findings, which is section 12A, and also the special permit findings, which is section 10-H7. I think Attorney Wolf walked us through those points, so they're reflected adequately in the record. And with regard to the special permit for nonconformities, I think that the findings in the record will show that there will be no new nonconformity, and that the proposed addition will not be more detrimental to the neighborhood than what is existing currently. So I think that I can support this project.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb?
I think that Mr. Moore and Mr. Delisle have really summarized the relevant points for this application. I really have nothing else to contribute. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Webb. And Mr. Swanton?
I think it's all been said well. I have nothing to add. I can support this application.
And thank you. Mr. Banovic?
Yes, I agree with everyone that's presented. I think it's well thought out, and I agree with the perspectives of the board. So I agree.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Banovic. I agree with the consensus of the board as well, and can support it for all of the reasons we've already discussed. And thank you to the applicant, Attorney Wolf, Mr. Blanchett, and I apologize. Who spoke on behalf of Scott Brown's office? I may have missed that.
It was me, Matt Lanches.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Pat. So with that, do we have a motion to approve?
Does Mr. Morrow make a motion to approve the special permit for nonconformities 2020-064 and in-law apartment special permit 2020-065 for 23 Boyd?
I'll second it. Rachel Webb.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. We'll take these, since there's two of them, we will take them one at a time. This is the vote on the special permit for nonconformities for the application 064 of 2020 to construct 699 square feet addition in order to use the addition as an in-law apartment. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Delisle?
Yes.
Ms. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Swanton?
Yes.
Mr. Banovic?
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That's 6 in the affirmative. The motion carries, and the application 064 for special permit is approved. The next application, special permit to allow an in-law apartment use number 109. Do we have a motion?
Excuse me, sorry, Mr. Chair, can I interrupt for just a second? This is Mr. Delisle.
Sure.
Don't we only need 5 votes on this? I heard you say that we had 6 in the affirmative.
1, 2, 3, 4. We have 6. Let me just see here. That's correct. Yeah, we only need 4.
Yeah, it's 4 out of the 5.
So
we only need 5 votes is my comment.
That's
we don't
correct.
need the 6th vote. We have 5 voting members, the members. We don't need to vote from the alternate.
Polling Mr. Banovic is unnecessary as the voting alternate. That's what you mean?
That's my comment. Yes, correct.
Fair enough. So we have 5 votes in the affirmative, having taken an extra vote in Mr. Banovic. Our apologies, Mr. Banovic. We will set aside your vote for that first portion of the application 064. Restarting then if I can have a motion to approve on the special permit to allow an in-law apartment use 109 on application 065.
So moved, Mr. Moore.
I'll second that, Mr. Delisle.
Okay, motion is made by Mr. Moore and seconded by Mr. Delisle. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Delisle?
Yes.
Ms. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Swanton?
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That is 5 in the affirmative on that application. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the application of 065 is also approved. Thank you all very much for your patience and for the participation this evening on that application. Before we, members of the ZBA, before we elicit a motion to adjourn, let's take a moment, if we could, and we didn't talk about this during the business meeting, but rather I put it at the end. We have...
Chair Champetti?
Yes.
Sorry, if we could just interject. We're not sure, but we believe that a caller in this evening may be the applicant for 162 that we had passed over. Not quite sure if the applicant was going to be able to join us.
Oh, I see a caller, yeah, 1603, the phone number ending in 031. So that's correct, and thank you for reminding me. We almost forgot to circle back on the minor modification of 162 State Street. And with that, we can revive that as part of our business meeting. Do we have someone to speak on the applicant to speak on behalf of the request for minor modification of 162 State Street?
Yeah, and let me just clarify for the caller in, if that's there, what you'll want to do on your end is press *6 to unmute yourself and speak. Just again, once that's,
looks like
so you've got it. Yep.
Yep. Hi, this is Rai Fahmy, 162 State Street.
Great, thank you, sir. This is Rob Champetti, Chair. We pressed pause on your application at the outset and wanted to make sure we didn't forget about you, sir. We have we're now at the end of our agenda. We're circling back to hear you on your application for a minor modification on the property of 162 State Street. And with that, we will hear from you on your request.
Okay, thank you so much. So we placed a letter in, looks like on the 3rd of September this year, for a request to approve removal of 2 large pine trees that are located on our property. They are located on the rear corner and the side of our property. These trees were protected during the development of the property to provide privacy to our abutters. What the issue was is, as we moved into our home, some of the tree limbs were hanging over onto the structure itself. We did remove some of the tree limbs and strip the trees down on one side to alleviate any obstruction into our home and cause any damage. But as that happened, the trees have been creating an incredible amount of sap that has blown with the wind onto our property, not only our houses, but our automobiles, and also a brick patio that we have on our back of our home. So we're requesting a variance to be able to remove those 2 trees and alleviate the sap, but we'll also go ahead and we're willing to replant some large European hornbeams in the back and some birch trees on the side of our property to create another natural barrier for the abutters.
Okay.
Rob, this is Andy Port. If you'd like, I could speak from the office's perspective.
Yeah, please. Would you please? Thanks, Andy.
Sure. I think, as was stated in the staff report, the original permit had some specificity as to the removal of these trees, and spoke about it in terms of whether or not there was any issue with respect to the tree's life and its ability to survive. That would be the basis for removal of the trees if need be. We believe that, given that the applicant is proposing to replace the trees with other trees, that it would be reasonable to treat this as a minor modification to allow the European hornbeams and the birch trees in their place. But that, of course, will be up to the board. But the reason why this is before you is just because there was one, sometimes with applications, you'll see tree plantings on a plan. Sometimes you'll see a text call out in the decision. In this case, the decision had made reference to those trees because there was some concern from abutters at the time that there'd be some sort of screening. So, presumably the tree replacements would provide the similar screening.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Was there anything else as part of the application that you wanted to add, sir, or can we go ahead and take it up and just discuss?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate my chance to speak again. I just want to just bring attention to the letters that were written by the majority of our abutters for support and removal of these trees.
Very good. Okay. Well, with that, members of the ZBA, we have the presentation on the minor modification. Looks like the removal of trees and the replacement with specific designated species of trees to create the same look, appearance, screen, and feel as we've heard from the applicant. Do we have any comments, thoughts, support, opposition? Mr. Moore, we'll start with you.
None specifically. I mean, I appreciated Andy getting into the opinion of the office on what seemed to be a real particular hurdle to taking the trees down, dead or dying. Although I guess you could say the trees weren't going to live forever, so they're always dying. But that would be a stretch to cover it that way. I guess my other question is how sure are we when you take out some really mature trees and put in really mature trees that it's just not a cycle of taking out and replacing? I guess that the new European hornbeams would work, I guess, is my question. And I don't know if anyone's on this call that could answer that, but.
Sorry, the office is not able to speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you know, I think none of us would really be able to speak to it. Even the most expert among us, or the most expert that would be able to speak to it, really is making an educated guess as to, I think it's, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's an indigenous species. So it's, you know, we have every reason to expect that it will fare well. Is that fair to say? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, with a little bit of background in landscape architecture, I would agree with that. I mean, as long as there's nothing unusual with the soils there that might, you know, if it's provided for properly, it should be fine.
All right, Mr. Delisle. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Delisle, anything that you wish to add or any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to confirm with the applicant that among those letters of support were the abutters on those affected sides, the back and the side where the birch trees will be replacing the sap producing pine trees.
Can you ask your question once again, please?
Oh yes, sorry. What I was wondering is with respect to the side where the sap producing trees are going to be removed, those are the abutters that would be impacted there are the abutters that have provided the letters of support.
Yes, they are the ones behind us and to the side of us, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything further, Mr. Delisle?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Ms. Webb.
Yes, I have a question for the applicant. I'm wondering if you might be able to guesstimate the approximate height of the existing trees and compare that with the height of the trees or the specification that you're going to be installing.
Yep, the trees that are existing currently are about 40 feet high. And we're not going to be replacing 40-foot high trees, but we'll try to get to at least 20 feet on the hornbeams, and I don't know what size on the birch.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Webb. Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I had two good questions, but my two colleagues immediately preceding me both asked both of them. So I really don't have any other questions. Thank you.
All right, isn't that always the case, right? We get upstaged.
Particularly when you get to go last each time, but that's fine.
All right, and I have nothing further to add at all. I think that it's an appropriate request, and certainly with no real expertise in the you know, in the tree dark arts. I don't know one species is more likely than another, other than them being indigenous. It seems like certainly an appropriate request and a modest and minor one. So I too can support it. Do we have a motion to approve?
So Mr. Moore, I'll make a motion to deem this request minor and approve the requested minor modification to the variance 2017-26 and special permit 2017-027 at 162 State.
I'll second that, Stephen Delisle.
Okay, motion is made by Mr. Moore and seconded by Mr. Delisle. Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Ms. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
And Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. The motion carries and the minor modification for 162 State Street is approved. Thank you, sir, for bearing with us and calling in and the presentation.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your consideration, all the board members. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a good evening.
Yeah,
okay.
you're also. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Members of the ZBA, that concludes our business agenda for the evening. Before we take a motion to adjourn, there is just one matter where we've kind of bantered about the idea of going into executive session with some notice to discuss issues related to the FAR out on Plum Island. And I believe that Mr. Moore, I'm sorry, is it? Yes, I believe Mr. Moore had specifically asked some questions with respect to that, and as well as others that may have expressed some interest in wanting us as a board to have executive session. So the best approach for that is to simply take a moment, decide to do that, and then put it onto the agenda, even though it's not a public participation portion of our business, in the spirit of that full disclosure and transparency, plus just to give each of us the opportunity to prepare thoughts and remarks that would be part of the executive session. I think it's best that we not try to do it this evening without anyone really having any notice or being prepared, but rather put it on to the next hearing, or at the end of the next hearing, which I believe is October 13th. Unless anyone has an objection, I have no problem with that. Does anyone have any thoughts or ideas?
Mr. Moore, I have two thoughts. One is, I believe credit goes to Mr. Delisle on the subject matter. And secondly, I think that makes sense to put on the agenda.
Okay. Mr. Delisle, do you want to speak further on it, or should we just go ahead? Do we all agree to just put this onto the agenda, publish it as an executive session following our October 13th meeting?
Yes,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I think that makes sense. And this is Mr. Delisle. I would just like to give credit to Mr. Swanton, who was the one who circulated the memo, sort of pointing out these issues with respect to the fire on Plum Island. So I think the credit goes to Mr. Swanton, and I think that an executive session after our next meeting makes good sense.
Okay, great. Well, then thank you, Mr. Swanton, as well. And Andy, if we could just recirculate Mr. Swanton's memo in advance of that as part of our materials, so this way everyone's, we're all sort of resynced on the same page.
Yes, definitely. Caitlin can attach that to the next staff report. And as I understand it, you're talking about the October 13th meeting, correct?
Correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I guess the only other thing I would ask is just a typical protocol. Would you like legal counsel for this Kopelman and Page to be there or not? I just wanted to know so I could prep in advance if they'd like to be there.
It probably makes sense if that is not if that's not an indulgent thing to do, since it's via Zoom now versus having to drag someone from Boston up to Newburyport. If it's something they can log on for to give us counsel and guidance, it would make sense if we were having an executive session that we came to some decision that that we were certain of had some merit in moving forward. That would be the best use of that time.
Okay, I'll arrange accordingly. Thank you.
This is Ken Swanton. If I could just chime in for 1 second.
Sure.
I'd like to thank Mr. Delisle for his kind words. And I very much appreciate the direction the committee is going on this. I've lived through an awful lot of executive sessions in prior lives and prior municipalities. And I fully support having it fully noticed on the agenda and having legal counsel present. And I think that's wonderful. And look forward to it 2 weeks from tonight.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you. Anything further? Okay, so we are in agreement. We'll add an executive session to the notice of our October 13th meeting. We'll circulate the memo that Mr. Swanton had put together initially, so that every member has some notice and some framework. We will invite via Andy's facilitation legal counsel from Kopelman and Page to guide and counsel us, and we'll do that at the end of that meeting on the 13th. With no further business before our board, we can conclude the business of the board. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. So quickly calling the roll, Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yes.
Ms. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Banovic.
Yes.
And Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That is all of us, 7 in the affirmative. The motion carries and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. And thanks again, Andy, Gretchen, Caitlin, as well as everyone on the board for sticking it out. Very short agenda. We get some stuff done. Have a great evening, everybody.
You too.
Nice work,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.